Greetings, vloggers, bloggers, followers, and potters. Dustin here from Dustin's Dynasty again with you this week with another edition of this week's vlog. Today we're going to talk about COVID, and I just want to preface that because I think it's important. I'm learning more about it, learning more about being blessed and COVID and what effect COVID has had in regression in the autism community, how individuals with autism have regressed. So if you want to stay tuned with that, you're more than welcome to. If not, you can, just a little preface there. We're going to be talking a lot about COVID today. So let's let's go back even before COVID, even before this nasty virus sort of began about 2 years ago, 2.5 now. I'm losing track of my time. But in February of 2020, I had to leave my home suddenly. Don't want to get too much into it, and that's my choice. I have the freedom to share. It just came to a point where I couldn't live there, not through my choice, but it was just a combination of things. All unmissed while I was experiencing some mental health issues, some challenges that I was facing, just issues across the board. I had to live with my parents. I didn't have a choice. Um, and it continued like that for a while. I knew uncertainty. I knew things would hopefully get fixed. It was at least a month I knew um, at the time, but I was unaware. So we fast forward. Still, the issue is working at being resolved. I couldn't work because of this issue, but eventually I was allowed to return effective March 16th, 2020. March 15th, 2020, I get a call from my supervisor on the telephone saying that this coronavirus emergency, which we had known had been declared as a pandemic 3 days prior, had resulted in things being shut down for at least 2 weeks, and that was what we were promised at the time. 2 weeks, and everything will be okay. We'll get back on track, pick up where we left off, and that essential personnel were allowed to work, but um, that not all employees were not to work. And so whatever, it was fine. I was happy. I was already off, and I was already losing money on things. So just 2 more weeks would be okay. And I'd be okay, and I'd survive. Um, Fast forward a little bit. Next day, we go into programming, and some things were changing. There was the guidance at that time was like, well, okay, we're not going to do anything outside. We're going to keep within ourselves. We're going to practice this thing called social distancing, which was a new term that we never heard of. And I'm 30. I mean, it was in my 30s, so it was never heard of. And just be careful and da 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 da. That evening, we get notice that the program will be shut down, and for at least 2 weeks, we got that told again, but I knew that it would probably be longer. I didn't know that, but every day was like, well, and my mother was who I was living with at the time, mom and dad. My dad's retired, but my mom was, she had known that they were working from home for a while, and it was just 2 weeks. Everybody was just told 2 weeks. We're gonna get through this. Everybody's gonna be fun. We're not gonna have anything going on. 2 weeks. Um, Obviously, 2 weeks nearly the end of the 2 weeks. Um, it was iterated that we would be going to virtual services, um, you know, at you know, at, for the day program at least. But then work had to come up with a plan, and it took time. So eventually, we got into working remotely into virtual services, and at this point, we're getting near Easter 2020. Um, and I'm not taking care of myself in the way I need to. I'm regressing even as a part of this because I have the things I'm starting to not have my personal freedoms. I'm starting not to be able to be not to be able. There's no vaccine at the time, there's nothing like that, and I'm starting to lose all sense of independence, all sense of personal freedoms. My bedroom is also my parents' home office. My mother worked on her dining room table. I did day program in that office room. That was the shared family computer. It was just so much. and it was compounding so much that eventually, for me not taking care of myself as regard to not properly to doing what was right, and having a toxic relationship on top of that, I eventually broke down, and many times my parents were the casualty, if you will, of my reacting in a negative manner, causing issues, causing, um, not just reacting and lashing out negatively, um, having such a negative effect on everybody. And, just, you know, and they didn't even, they didn't deserve that. And, I was in a crisis several times. It took the therapist to intervene. If it wasn't for the therapist intervening on Easter 2020, I don't know what would have happened. I think about it a lot. Um, I think about, I would have, I would have been in a hospital. I would have been dropped at the curb at the hospital. And I know my parents didn't want that for me. I know I didn't want that. But at that time, it was like almost giving up hope. It was almost dialing 911 and getting the hospital involved. So, just those things were really bothersome. Um, so we got over that hump, and of course, therapy was virtual, um, was Zoom based. Um, we had other services; they were pretty much phone based or other things. A few months later, it was discovered as things were returning back. It was discovered that I would not be returning to that apartment, and it was just there was things was not proving well. I had to terminate my lease, and I did. And so I didn't know what was going to happen next. And continuing the ball, continued rolling on regression, kept having relapses every so often. It just kept happening. But at least eventually we got to go back to work, got to go back to day program. So at least there was some resemblance of normalcy, not in the capacity that it was previously. We were still doing therapy in a virtual manner. We were still doing things that just weren't, you know, that weren't weren't that they were becoming the new normal. There was no vaccination still, but as time went on, we learned and we grew and we moved on. Um, it's just been very challenging. So eventually, I said, well, I gotta get back on, I gotta find some sort of independence or I'm going to lose it. Um, my parents, I love them dearly. They're great people. They would do anything for me at the rush of a heartbeat. But it was coming to the point where we were starting to come unglued. Um, they had when things got settled with the first apartment, and I knew I was going to be there. They took a little day trip and went to the lake, and which is about a 3 hour drive, 4 hour drive, and um, and when I found out about that, when I came home and said where they went and what they did, which was some of the interests that I had, um, really made me angry, and I really resented that for a very long time. That I needed to get away, but I wasn't, and but now I understand why. And seeing these parents, I do follow TikTok a lot. I don't really post TikTok, but I do have a TikTok channel at Destiny's Dynasty ASD. But I'm following these parents, and I'm seeing, I do. So, I'm kind of like unbiased towards both parents and individuals on the spectrum, but I see these parents with these higher needs children, and they're just struggling. And I think now that I see that in that way, um, I see that now why they had to do that and why they had to just get away because I was constantly, under their roof. My parents were constantly, my mother was working at the time, just buying her time to retirement. And it was just such a struggle, such a gosh darn struggle to get through things and get through the day to day operations. And while I was back and I had they gave them some respite, it was just too much. And I see that now. So moving forward, that was 2020. So that was, the world was kind of shut down. There was um, no vaccine as of then. Um, So it was kind of a challenge then. But I knew at that point I had to start looking for something to live, a place to live. And, housing is hard to find. And the housing crisis was hard hit by COVID. Um, a lot of things were hard hit. Food, everything. We were just struggling to survive. But at least I had my job. And, that's the good thing about my job. I didn't lose my job because of the pandemic. Um, uh, I was asked to take a voluntary layoff, but I was saved by that, and my work hours were reduced by half. So, I think that was truly the saving grace that kept things going. That I did not lose my job or didn't have to be take a furlough or anything like that during the pandemic. Um, so things started getting back into summer semblance, but I knew I had to get back and find some independence and get back on my own because I knew that it was like a ticking time bomb. It only had so much time, so I was going to regress more and make life very difficult for my parents, and I would be in a hospital, in an institution, in a group home, something. I knew I was going to regress even more. So lo and behold, I did some searching. I called I I literally had that as my goal to find housing. And when through the day program, and some of it they worked with me some on, but I literally called places. I sent applications. I applied for things. I had interviews. I mean, it just took so long. And when I wanted to move out again, wanted to stay in the community that I live in because I've lived in this community for 30 some years. I wanted to be in the same neighborhood that I was in previously. I knew that would be a long shot because of things. Um, I didn't want to move to the county seat. A lot of issues with that. There's a lot of crime, a lot of stigma, things like that. And I didn't want to be far from my family because my family is a big support, even though we have an odd dynamic and living is a challenge with us, living under their roof. Um, we have very different dynamics, and it was very hard to maintain a healthy living situation under that. So regardless, I did this, I did my applications, I did everything, I found all these, and so we're talking October 2020 now. And it's just like I see this ad in the paper, in the newspaper for apartments, and I called the local housing board. Um and they say, well, it's for 50 and up. And so, okay. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever. It's not meant for me, whatever. The next day, the same gentleman calls me back. He is my building manager now. And he says, well, you need an apartment. And I'm like, yeah, kind of in a situation. He goes, let's go look at the other property. He goes, I got a property down there. He goes, you interested in it? And I said, well, let's do some research. So um I go down to the administration building, which is a couple blocks over from here, and I do my paperwork. And we go tour this apartment and where I live now, and and he says, we discussed my previous problems and all that, and so I prayed about it, and that was faith. That was what saved me, and that's why I said, sometimes we have to. If you believe in faith, that's your thing. If you don't, I understand. Everybody has their own belief system, but I believe that that gentleman was my saving grace. Um, I think, it's very hard to get into these apartments. I have to admit that. It's not easy. There's issues, you're very cherry picked. There's a very tedious tenant selection process. That's their playbook of how to do things. Um, I was very blessed to get in here during COVID, almost at the surge of a COVID-19 reset, resurgence. And so I got moved in. Things were good, I got, things moved in. It was good. So, things goes on, that was what the saving grace was. If I didn't have that, I would be, in a hospital, in a state facility. I would be in a group home. There was my independence was back. And it wasn't even fully back at that time, but I had some sort of freedom and some sort of individual freedom. So, we had a resurgence the following month, and it was a lot about working at home again. Got to keep the same hours, but worked at home. Things started to get better, as time goes on, but I'm still isolated. I was still isolating from many. For about the next year, I didn't want to go nowhere. I don't want to do anything. I still feel that way sometimes. I still don't want to do a lot of things. We had a lot of the in Pennsylvania here where I live, there were a lot of restrictions on gathering limits, grouping, the mask wearing. We've been in mask wearing for about until 2022. So, we had a lot of issues with that. I didn't want to do things, didn't want to do activities. Activities were pretty much on hold, for things. So it was a lot of issues with that. Um, but I didn't, and I regressed some. I think so much for me, the skills that I regressed was about social skills, about going through the struggles, managing other people's emotions, co-regulation, um, things of that nature, like things where I would feed off of energy of others, and I still have trouble with that. I can feed off the energy of others. I'm bouncing back better. I've done a lot of therapy. I wouldn't be anywhere without therapy. It's what saved me. It's what keeps me going. I didn't think if I told you years ago, if I was doing even this, living on my own, that I would not even be, living on my own if it wasn't for therapy. So that is a saving grace as well. Having therapy is important. I feel it is. So, it's just all on what you think. But I think as time went on, I'm starting to get back into things in the community. It's just learning the way of the neighborhood. We even have bridge construction going on now. So in my neighborhood, so that's kind of a thing, and that's a struggle. Sometimes with anxiety and not wanting to go out. Sometimes I have anxiety because maybe the construction workers or just something. There's just all this anxiety. Of course, autism and anxiety are kind of in common, so they're kind of comorbidities. And so, it's not, it's getting things better. This week, I'm going on an outing with my day program, and I haven't done that in quite a while, and I haven't done it very much in years. So I think just getting back out and doing things again is great. But we must remember, folks, that you know there's so many out there in the autism community, not only in the autism, but ID, special needs, all those great things that all those services that are where people are marginalized, where they're not getting out and they're not being able to do things. They're not being able to access services in the way that they once did. There's no more face to face or um, day programs that are really cut. So sometimes we're blessed with things, and sometimes we have to count our blessings for those things. And I'm very thankful I have a good internet connection. The other year this week, I was off a day and getting ready for things here. We have annual reviews and stuff, but I think I was without internet for 2 hours, and I struggled a bit with it. I have unlimited data on my cell phone, thank goodness, but I think I struggled with a bit with that because it was so challenging to know what do you do with that internet. I stream my TV, all those things. You just have to build new routines. And I think that's the thing too. You have to build new routines and ways of doing things. And I've had the gift of writing my blog and creating the blog and the vlogs that I've done for this. Um, that was where it started from a mobile worker. And over the years, it's blossomed to what it is, and I love it. I love having that as part of my routine, a part of my makeup, part of sharing my experience with you all. I've had the website for about 4 years, um, but I never really invested into it as much as I have now. But it is what keeps me going. It is what makes my life great and makes me tell my story about who I am because it's all these years of being in a system it tells my story, and that's what helps. So I hope that helped you a little bit today. I know I rambled a bit, but I think it's important to realize that, you know, what what autism families as well as autistic individuals, particularly those of higher needs and those that would need more things are going on without there and the struggles and just knowing that it gets better. I hope it does. I hope the world gets better. I'm starting to see mask mandates being lifted more and more at other places as well. So it's getting better. So with that being said, I want to thank you for listening today. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Be sure to tap the notification bell if you want to hear more videos. I post one every week. Or, like this video. Um, Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dustin's Dynasty, on the web at dustinsdynastyusa.com. Uh, Be sure to follow me on Dustin's Dynasty ASD on TikTok and Pinterest. And I'm on this vlog will be transcoded into a podcast on Spotify where it's featured as a video and several others. We just added Amazon Music last week. So I'm an Amazon Music follower. I love my Amazon Music and I would endorse it greatly if I could. But I know some people have some hate with Jeff Bezos, but it's what scares me. And maybe we'll do a vlog on that next week. So with that being said, have a good week, everyone, and bye for now.